Now I want you to imagine that you're out on the plains of Africa, thousands of years ago, dressed in your finest loincloth with your best spear, walking around the plains. Now, I was thinking about doing a reenactment of that whole scene on this video, but I figured you'd appreciate it if I was dressed a little more modernly and not in my loincloth, which I don't own one, by the way. Don't have a loincloth. Anyways, so you're out on the plains of Africa. You're walking around, and all of a sudden, a huge tiger comes jumping out of the bush, and it wants to eat you, and you know it wants to eat you. So if you were to take a freeze frame of what's going on inside of your brain in that moment when you realize, holy crap, there's a big tiger about to eat me, this is kind of something what it would look like. So let's go back to our three-part brain model here, the triune brain. There's a little part of your emotional brain here, this part of your thumb, called the amygdala. And brain scientists refer to the amygdala as like the smoke detector or the fire alarm of the brain, because when it senses threat, its number one job is to sense a threat and to mobilize the rest of the brain and the body to say, hey guys, come on, there's something that's about to eat me. There's a tiger out there coming to get me. So what happens is the amygdala and this brainstem area, they really work sort of hand in hand, if you'll forgive the pun with my hand out here, to keep you alive and safe. And what happens in the threat response, when the threat response gets triggered, is the brain releases these neurochemicals of cortisol and adrenaline. And what those do is they basically prepare your body to fight, flight, or to flee or freeze. You've heard of the FFF response. So we like to call it the threat response because it gets you thinking about, when you're dealing with limiting beliefs, that there's a threat. So that's what the limiting belief is about. So the purpose of this threat response in your brain is to keep you alive. Its job is to mobilize your brain and your body to deal with the threat. And what happens is when you're under threat, that rational part of your brain, the blood flows away from it. It kind of gets shut off, and the survival parts of your emotional brain and your limbic and your brainstem areas get really hyperactivated so that you're focused on the threat so you can deal with the threat and get yourself to safety. Now, it's actually a good thing when you're under physical threat for your rational brain to be turned off, because you don't need to be thinking about your to-do list. You don't need to be thinking about, well, my 5 goals for today are, I want to get blah, blah, go to the gym. And, when a tiger's chasing your butt, it doesn't care about what your goals for the day are. Its goal is to get you inside of its stomach, right? And to feed its cubs with you. So the gist of that is the threat response in the brain is an amazing response for dealing with actual threats to our survival, like when someone's coming trying to hurt us or something. But most limiting beliefs, as you'll see in the next section, are not about the actual physical threats to our survival, but emotional and social threats to our survival. Now, the tricky part about really and truly overcoming a limiting belief is that limiting beliefs always come along with the threat response. When a limiting belief gets activated, the threat response in your brain is triggered. And you have to know how to deal with that threat response and how to turn it off so that your emotional brain can relax and say, okay, the threat's over, it's done. And I can move forward into this area of my life that I was previously blocked or stuck in. So just bear that in mind, that there's always a body response that happens with your limiting beliefs too. That's why you have that tension in your shoulders or maybe the queasiness in your stomach. It's a sign that the threat response is activated in your brain and your body.